Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This is the March 2016 Project of the Month, and if you were tuned into the webinar last month, then you probably got a little preview of what we're going to be doing this month. But this month, we're going to be working in the software with one of the newest design collections, the You Design It collection. I'm very, very excited about that. And the project that we're going to be making is this growth chart. So I'm going to, on the left-hand side of the screen, if you can see my mouse, then I'm illustrating. This was the original project that was made by Clarissa Gossett, and she's an incredible educator. She put this together. She had it at VDTA, and everybody went crazy over it, including myself. I asked her if I could borrow it and if I could modify it and use it for a project of the month. And the project that you see is the one here on the right in the black. And so that's what we're going to be looking at today. So starting with this, you'll have materials. And I will talk to you in a minute about where to find those materials. You're going to want to do your latest free designs, and that will give you the handout that accompanies this lesson. It's a 12-page handout, and it kind of walks you through the steps that you need for creating your designs and actually constructing the project. As I go through this month, though, one of the things I want to emphasize, though, is that I want to lay a foundation for you to build the project. And from that foundation, I want you to take it and I want you to run with it. So, you know, if you want to make one exactly like mine or exactly like Clarissa's, that's fine. But I want to encourage you to, you know, do something better than mine, better than Clarissa's. So, for your materials today, you will need your latest update of your software. When you install that update, that's going to give you the newest tools that You Design It and the wordplay. And I believe that the update is 3020. You should have this project. In the project, there's a detailed supply list in there. So the materials that you're going to need under Floriani materials is, of course, your thread. So embroidery thread and creative thread. Your Floriani Dreamweave Ultra, and I put in there that this is optional, but I really recommend that for preparing your fabric to accept your embroidery perfection tape, your Floriani template tearaway, and your template tearaway is important for this particular project. We're also going to be using the Floriani Deco Magic, and I used the light. If you haven't seen this product, it's hard for me to describe it. It's absolutely fantastic. It has an adhesive on there. You adhere your fabric to it. It's very needle friendly, but it provides a texture to it. It also almost makes your fabric like leather. I'm obsessed with this product. I'm actually going to incorporate it into next month's project too. I love it. If you haven't seen it, get to your Floriani dealer and get your hands on some of this. You will need your Floriani chrome needles. The 7511 is our embroidery needle. But for this project, I actually embroidered directly through the Deco Magic, and so I used the heavier needle. So I used the 9014 top stitch needle. We have a new needle. It's the 8012 jeans needle, and I use that for the final construction of my project. Your stabilizer, I recommend the Floriani Perfect Stick Stabilizer. Although as I was putting this project together and after the fact telling somebody about it, I thought, boy, this would be a great project for your Floriani wet and stick stabilizer. So you could use that also. Your medium tearaway for a floater, I recommend the Heat and Gone topping for this particular project. It's wonderful. It's really going to help your designs look good. And then Floriani Stitch Perfection Tape. Some of your other items that you need are fabric, of course. And then look for trim. So buttons, rickrack, ribbon, anything that you want to put on there. You're going to need a tape measure because this is a growth chart, and then maybe some grommets or rings so that you can hang your growth chart up, and any other trim that you would like to have as desired. We're going to go into the software component now and create the design. So there's two components to this lesson. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create the text heading. So I show you right here, the one on the dark fabric, they grow so fast. And then the other heading, look at me grow. So you'll see that they're both different, but they talk about growth. So you might head to the internet or Pinterest or kind of come up with a different idea for your growth chart. It might even be, maybe a child or a grandchild's name, Christina's growth chart, or Christian growing, or something like that. And then we're going to work with the You Design It collection. And if you've downloaded your software update and started playing with these, they are so much fun. So I think you'll really enjoy this. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to toggle over into my Floriani software now, and let's go ahead and get started with our lesson. From this screen right here, let's go ahead and create a new design. And I'm going to real quickly open up a couple of designs that I created just a minute ago, and it's this right here. Hang on just a second. I'm going to bring, well, I'm going to bring in this design so that we can be going back and referring to this one. And let me open up another. I'm going to go down all the way and grab this one. And while these aren't designs, I just thought I would bring up the pictures of the two finished projects so that I could toggle back and kind of talk about different elements as we go through the process. Okay, now with that in mind, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our text. So I'm going to click on my text tool, and I'm going to use regular text. I left click and put in my text placeholder. If you've been working in the software, you know that the font that comes up is the last font that you were using. We're going to come up into our properties box. We're going to type in our text, and the text that I had put in there was they grow. And I'm going to do a hard return. So I'm pressing my enter key to drop that to a second line, and I'm going to type in so fast. And I have to put in an exclamation mark, because if you know me, you know I'm an exclamatory kind of person. And now I'm going to go ahead and click on apply. So that updates my text. I want to take just a minute and talk about the different fonts that come with your software. And currently, I'm not sure what the count is that we're up to. I believe it's over 170. But I'm going to click on the font drop-down, and you can choose any font that you want for your project. But the fonts, I wanted to real quickly talk about fonts that have that circle, the red O in front of them. So for instance, this Diana font, the font that I used was the Dill Pickle. When you see a font that has that O in front of it, and the O shows right here, that's a font that actually has additional style options with it. And so when you choose one of those fonts, make sure that after you've selected it, you come down under Style, that you click under that style, and this will give you additional options for that particular font. And I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where I would put some kind of a text in a design, and it would be a satin stitch, and I would think, oh my gosh, that would look really good if I put it as a run stitch. So you can come in, and right there, you have a run stitch, and of course this is going to stitch out faster. So there are times when you might want to do that. So now you have these fantastic fonts that come with your software. Let me just undo, and just so you know, these are the two most important buttons in your software, the undo button and the redo button. Undo, redo, because then you can play with something, and if you don't like it, just real quickly undo. So now I've got my text in. The next thing that I'm going to do for my project is I'm going to add a visual placeholder. When I'm designing a project, I go about it a couple of different ways. And usually I would take my text and I would select it, and then I'd move over to my Transform tab here, and I'd input the directions, the dimensions that I want for my finished text. But in this project, I'm going to do something just a little bit different. So I could do that. I might come in here and do my show grid and resize my text according to my grid. But on this project, what I did, and let me just real quickly go back over to my project. So I measured the dimensions. I cut my fabric, and I have an idea of how big my growth chart is going to be. And then I came in and I measured my width of my growth chart, and I measured the height. And I actually, and you can't see this because I've erased it, but I took a chalk marker and I put a line down there to kind of give me an indication of how large I wanted this to be. So I measured that. And the width is about 13 inches, and the height I decided should be about 5 to 6 inches. So let me go back to my text. And I'm going to drop in the artwork, a rectangle right here, just a piece of artwork. And the only purpose for this artwork is to just give me an area to place my text in. So with my artwork, I come to my Transform tab. I deselect the Maintain Aspect Ratio. And then my height, as I mentioned previously, is going to be 5 inches. And my width is going to be 12 inches. And then I'm going to click on Apply. Now, I've got this visual box that I'm going to use as my backdrop for resizing my text. So I come in now, I click on my text, and I'm just going to start enlarging it. Now, if you select your text, and I'm going to do this and exaggerate the size of my text right now. If you get this warning where you've created satin segments with the width exceeding the recommended height, then go ahead and deselect that. You don't want that. That's one of the things that actually leads to puckering, especially with your text when you're putting it in there. So if you hit that sweet spot where you get the warning, just back it off a little bit. So I'm filling up this space in there, and once I get it to about the size that I want, I'm going to go back to my design here so that you can see I want to create this nice arc in that text. So with my design selected, currently these handles around the outside of my text are for resizing it. So if I drag here, it makes it wider. If I drag here, it makes it taller. I want to go back to, and I call these advanced text editing options. So with my text selected, I come back up and I reselect that text tool. And now I've got these options in here. So these are for kerning your text. And what I'm looking for is right here, and this around the outside of the text is called the envelope. And every one of these corners allows you to do something different with your text. So if I come to the center and I drag up, it's going to give me that real nice arc across the top. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to arc the bottom also. So this is just a matter of, arc it to where you like it. So I'm using that artwork in the backdrop. I'm moving this around. I like the arc. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger to fill up the space in there. And that's all I did for the text. So once I got it to the size that I wanted, I'm going to come up, I'm going to save that, and I just real quickly will mention, when you're working in the software and you're making designs, always save your design as a WAF file first. That is the software format. We won't go into the details of it at this time, but if I were to, and this is just a for instance, I've got my text here. I take it over to my machine. I get ready to stitch it out, and maybe I misspelled a word. I've been known to do that. So I need to go back into the software and edit that. If I didn't save it as a WAF file, if I just export it from my machine, then I have to import my machine format, and every time you export and import, it kind of changes the design. So just as a rule of thumb, always, always take the time to save your design as a WAF first. So I'm going to go File. I'm going to save that in my folder. I'm going to call it Text. And then I'm going to Save As, and I'm just going to come down and choose the format that I need for my machine. And then this is the file that I will take to my embroidery machine. So my text, I'm working today with EXT file. I save it, and then I'm going to take that to my machine and stitch it out. That's fairly easy. So going back to my design here, when I got ready to put my project together, this is the first part of the design. So I just this off, stitch that out, and now we're ready for the fun part. We're going to open up a new document, And then we're going to come over and click on this little icon right here, which is our You Design It, which is, these are so much fun. And as I said, if you have installed your software update and you have started playing with these different kinds of designs, you know how much fun they are. Under the body here, under the galleries, I have a lot of different collections in there. You're going to have the Monsters collection. So for the time being, I'm just going to work with this Monsters collection. The first thing we're going to do is select a body. So I've got multiple bodies to choose from. And it was really funny. When I started looking at the designs, I don't know why, but I made them gender specific. So like I called this a she, and this is a he. This is Mr. Potato Head for some reason. I think he looks like a potato head. So I don't know why I did that. But we're going to work with this design first of all. If you watched the webinar last month when BJ was going through how these You Design It works, then you probably remember this. But a You Design It has these little circles, and those circles are called magnets. So down here, if I select Hide Magnets, right there, it'll turn them off and on. The purpose of those magnets is that as we add elements, and I call these, when I'm trying to describe to customers what the You Design It is, the only thing I can think of is a Mr. Potato Head. So you start with the body and you add your arms and your legs and all your different elements. So I describe these as a Mr. Potato Head. So I've got my Mr. Potato Head and I'm ready to start adding different kinds of things to them. And this tells where these are going to go. So here's a left arm, and as soon as I click on that, then it automatically drops over into my design. And so arm left, you also have the ability to filter. So I'm only looking at the arm, the left arm, and these are my three options. So I call this my Muscle Man arm, this is my normal arm, and this is my wimpy arm. I know, I made names for everything as I was going through working on this lesson. So we're going to start with this arm, and I'm going to put a right arm on there. Now, I'm a very linear sequential person, and so when you go back to my designs and to Clarissa's, you'll notice that our arms match, everything matches. Our monsters are very linear and sequential. I encourage you to think outside of the box because maybe you want to have a beefy left arm and a skinny right arm, and that's fine. Let's look at some head elements. So these are going to pop up in here. So we have in this, we have eyes, we have horns, we have antennas, we have ears. You know, like I said, I had to give names to everything in here. So we're going to go with this head left, and then we're going to go to my head right, and I'm going to make it match, or you could put a bow in there if you wanted. And then the last thing we need are our legs. And I love the legs. And this is one of my favorites, this duck leg. I don't know why I call it a duck leg, but it is. So, and I will tell you this. You can spend hours, literally, just creating different kinds of designs with this. You are going to have so much fun if you haven't tried this yet. Now, you could have some other options in here. If you right-click on a magnet, you have the ability to, at this point, rotate that element. If I right-click here, I can nudge that element so I can move it up, down, left, right. So you can do that in here. You can also change the order. So if I wanted this to be the first thing to stitch out, then I could choose first in there. So you do have that ability. And once I generate the design, once I click on OK, I still can make all of those separate changes. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And now I've just generated my design. Let me go ahead and select 3D. Let me go up and choose Zoom to Fit so that we have a better view of that. And here's my little monster. Now, at this point in time, I'm going to make, I can see it better. And so I'm going to make some changes. So, for instance, here's this horn, and I could even do this. This is why I said you can spend so much time in the software. I could come over and rotate that. So we'll just rotate those a little bit. I could make my legs stand out. You could be doing a little dance and a little Irish jig for St. Patrick's Day. And maybe this is. So you have the ability to do a lot of different things. So this is going to stitch out behind the body. This is in front of the body. One of the things that you'll need to do once you've created your design, oh, I see a mistake here. I got to connect that horn down to his head. Notice that as I generated the design, when I come up on top, it tells me that this design has 13 color changes in it. So as it generates the design, what's going to happen is that, for instance, each arm comes in as this part of the arm and then the hand, and this part of the arm and the hand. And when I first worked with the software, when I first worked with the design, I manually went in and said, oh, I'm going to click and drag, and we're going to make all these same colors work together. But you know there's an easier way to do this. Select all items, and we're going to come up and we're going to use this tool right here called our color sort. So I've got 13 colors right here. I'm going to click on my color sort, and it has reduced this design 5 colors. So now I've got the arms and the body stitching out together, the Russian violet. And this is what I love about the color sort. When I was manually moving the colors up and down, so I've got ice cap right here and ice cap right here. It's like, oh, my thinking is that I'm going to combine those. Well, this is the outside of the eyes, and then this is the detail that stitches out on the top. So if I combined those colors, and I'll just do that for you, what you'll see is that now I've just lost the detail of that. So I'm just going to undo. Remember, 2 most important buttons in the software are undo and redo. So I've got this sorted out there. I'm looking at the size here. The height is 2.91 inches. Now, going back to Clarissa's example, she's got 9 different monsters stitched out on here. And her monsters, and I'm going to zoom in so that you can see this. Let's go to this little creature right here. And he starts at about 26 inches and goes to 30. So this is pretty much the original size of that monster. I'm going to go back over to my design right here. And what you'll see is that down here on the bottom, this was my smallest monster. And then I gradually made the monsters larger in size. So this is the biggest one, and this is the smallest one. And my whole objective behind that was that it was just going to kind of be an indication of how kids grow. Our kids are monsters. And I don't have any grandkids, so I use my grand doll. Okay, so with that in mind, I've got my design, and it's 2.91 inches. I want to make it a little bit bigger. And this is where I'm going to go into my Properties tab. I'm going to come over to the Transform, and I'm going to use my Transform tab to resize my design. So when I resize the design, 99% of the time I use the Transform tab. I'm going to make sure that I have the box selected for Maintain Aspect Ratio so that when I input the width, it'll update the height or vice versa. And I'm just going to tell, I've decided that, oh, I think this little monster should be 4 inches in. There we go. Let's see now. Looking pretty good. I'm ready to send that to my machine. I'm not going to do anything else with this design. So, and you have the ability to do a multitude of changes. For instance, I'm going to go back into the body right here of this fill, and I could change the fill type in here. So maybe I would go fancy and apply here. I could do that to the arm. And when I go back over and showcase Clarissa's, that is one of the things that she did with every one of her designs. I'm going to grab my hand tool so I can pan up. But you'll notice she went in and she put a fancy fill in each of her designs. I think that's pretty cute. I didn't do that, but you could do that at this point in time. So I'm ready to save this for my machine. Now, I might want to, and I will be honest with you, I did not use Save to Sew for any of my designs. I went ahead, I created my designs, I sent them out to my machine, and they stitched out beautifully. But I know a lot of you like to use the Save to Sew. So if you want to use Save to Sew, we're putting this on quilting material. I'm going to come down, put in quilting material for the iDigitize. This is a solid indent design. There's no open and airy about it, and we are not going to hoop the fabric. I went ahead, and when we get into putting the project together, you'll see this. I prepared my fabric with 3Move Ultra, and then I adhered that directly to my Deco Magic, and I embroidered my designs directly through the Deco Magic because it's a very needle-friendly material. But if you want to stitch your designs onto your fabric and then adhere your fabric to the Deco Magic after the fact, I would definitely run my design through Save to Sew and prepare it for that quilting fabric ahead of time. So I would do solid indents, go next through there, next, and then save that design. When I use the Save to Sew feature and I get to the saving portion of this, this is just something that I do. It's just a little quirky thing that I do. But as I save the design, I might call this Monster 1. And then I always put in some kind of an abbreviation that tells the fabric that I ran it through. So I ran this through quilting fabric, so I might put in there quilting fabric. So that's just a little thing that I do when I'm saving a design, and you might want to do that also. So I've got my design ready to sew. I'm going to save it, and of course, you're going to save this as a WAF file first. So we call this Monster. And then we're ready to save as. With the monsters, the other thing that I did is I recommend that you print your designs onto template tearaway. And as I said, when we get into building the project, you'll see this in better detail. So let's look at that. We're going to go into File, Print Preview, and I'm going to bring up my Print Preview screen and just show you a couple of different settings options in there. Number one, make sure that you have this box checked for print actual size. I like to print the color analysis. I stitch in EXP format, so I use the color analysis. This option right here for print on one page, depending on the design, it can save you paper. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and what you'll see is it's going to drop my color analysis down here onto the bottom of my page. That's just something that you can do in there, so I'll deselect that. I like to have the box checked for show crosshair and show thick crosshair. This is your crosshair, and this shows the exact center point. And this is why you want to print on template tearaway, is this is going to allow you to precisely place your design on this continuous piece of fabric. So I like to do the thick crosshair. And the last thing I want to mention, because I could go ahead and print now, but when you are printing, you always want to go in and you want to check your print setup. And your print setup is actually the printer settings that are dependent on the printer that you're using. So your printer settings for your printer, whether it's an HP printer or an Epson printer, I use a Canon printer, your printer settings override the settings from the software. So if I inadvertently had come in under my printer settings, and I'll go to my page setup, and I have a little box right here that says automatically reduce a large document, that box, that could change the size of my design. My printer setting might override the size of it and do that. So I always go in before I print and double check this. The other thing, and this is just native to my particular printer, is that it default checks from the last page. So it's going to print from the last page first. And if I print a separate page with my color analysis, when I put my template paper into my printer, and I recommend only feed one piece of template paper through your printer at a time. I've tried it before where I try to save time and stack a couple of sheets of template tearaway in there and print a couple of them, but you'll have better results if you just take the time to feed your template tearaway through your printer one sheet at a time. The other thing that I do is I always leave a couple of a stack of regular printer paper underneath the template tearaway. It gives it a cushion, and for some reason it helps the template tearaway feed through your printer just a little bit better. So those are just a couple of little tips in there. And then I'm ready to print. But if I didn't change that setting for print on the last page, it inadvertently prints my color analysis on my template tearaway, and it prints my design on regular paper. So the moral of that little piece is always, always go in and just verify your printer settings before you hit that print button so you don't waste your piece of template tearaway. And so now I'm just ready, and I'm going to send that to my printer. Okay, so now you can, and there's a couple of ways to go about your project. So you could go through and you could create all of your designs and print them and then take them to your machine. Or another scenario is, instead of doing all of your designs at the same time, create a design, print it out, take it over, and start building your project from that particular perspective. So, and I'm going to close this now, my printer settings. And the last thing that I'm going to mention is that I adhered my fabric to my DecoMagic material. So I'm not hooping the fabric. Because I'm not hooping the fabric, I need to use a basting stitch. I can add a basting stitch at my sewing machine, but I also want to remind everybody that you've got this wonderful tool in your software called Auto Baste. And when you select that Auto Baste, what it's going to do, and this is just get into the habit of using it, it's going to go ahead and generate a basting stitch. It always makes it the first thing to stitch out, and so it's going to make this nice basting stitch, so you don't have to even think about doing a basting stitch in your machine. You can just go ahead and generate that one in the software. Or I have a machine that doesn't even have the ability to do a basting stitch, and this basting feature in our software is wonderful. So if you add the basting stitch, make sure that you do a file and save your design for your machine after you create the basting stitch. Save yourself some time. So you would go ahead, make additional designs as desired. I'm going to toggle back over. Let me check my list here. I made some notes to make sure that I covered everything in the lesson. Latest update, you design it, color sort I talked about, and print design. And I'll just go back and reiterate this color sort. As you work through creating your design, make sure that you use that color sort feature in there, because you certainly wouldn't want to create a monster or create a design and not hit that color sort, and then when you get it to your machine, you're going to have, you know, 15 or, believe it or not, even 20 or 24 color changes when you get to your machine. And that color sort works beautifully. Okay, so let's go back over to our software lesson. We talked about that, and now we're ready to put our project together. So we're going to gather the materials, and I did put a list in the handout that accompanies the lesson. This is just some different things that I gathered. Originally, I wanted to put my project on chalkboard material so that I could use chalkboard markers and write directly on it. Long story short, after going through 3 pieces of chalkboard material, I decided that chalkboard material does not work well with satin designs, and I moved to quilting fabric. So these are decorative, I don't know if they're decorative tape measures, but you can buy them at the store. They cost, I paid 99 cents for them, so they're actually pretty cheap. And when I found them, I didn't buy one, I had to buy 6 because if one's good, 6 is better. So I bought one in every color, and there's probably more than that. But these are just the little decorative tape measures that you're going to need. Buttons right here, grommets, these are drapery grommets, these are just regular grommets. You know, anything goes that you're going to add to your project. And I always gather the materials ahead of time when I'm at the store. When I'm putting my project together, my husband even said this. I always have to go back to the store and buy different stuff. So, and my stash gets bigger and bigger. Okay, so prepare your fabric ahead of time. So you've chosen the fabric that you want, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to cut your fabric to, I would make it larger than desired, 1 to 2 inches wider and 1 to 2 inches longer. And that's just to accommodate any kind of, you know, shrinkage of the fabric through the embroidery process, because you can stabilize as good as well as you want, but ultimately embroidery is going to cause shrinkage in your fabric. There's no way to get around it. So we want to minimize that shrinkage and puckering, but just make your fabric a little bit bigger to accommodate that. Dreamweave Ultra, I learned this from Debbie Homer-Hoffheim. I take the time to put Dreamweave Ultra on anything that I'm embroidering. It really is worth the time and the cost. When you're putting together a project, Dreamweave Ultra is amazing, and what it will do for your fabric is it doesn't change the hand of the fabric, but increases the thread count, and it will help your fabric to accept your embroidery design. And if you start putting Dreamweave on your fabric before you embroider it, you will see drastically improved results. And I want to underline and boldface the word drastically. When you put your Dreamweave on your fabric, you want to use a pressing motion. It does have some stretch to it, and so when I talk about pressing, you put your iron down, lift it up, and move it across. And utilize a pressing cloth with the Dreamweave Ultra, because if you get your iron a little too hot, there's a possibility that you could melt that. So I put Dreamweave on my fabric first. Once I have my Dreamweave on my fabric, then I fuse my fabric directly to my Deco Magic. So Deco Magic has, and you can't tell what it is from the picture here, but with the Deco Magic, it has an adhesive on there, a fusible adhesive. And so I went ahead and I fused my fabric directly to the Deco Magic and did my embroidery all the way through there. Works beautifully. You're going to love it. Okay, so I've got my Deco Magic on my fabric. I printed my design template. So you can see from the picture here, I went ahead and stitched out the heading on the project. I didn't even print that on Template Tearaway. I just measured off the area, centered it up, and stitched that out. Then once I got that on there, then I laid this down with all of the elements that I was going to put into my project. So these are my designs that I've printed off onto the Template Tearaway. Here's my tape measure, and then this is a piece of chalk fabric. So since I couldn't make my whole project out of chalk fabric, I thought, well, I'm going to put just a piece on the side there, and then I could write on it. So the use of Template Tearaway, it's worth the time. And I'm like everybody else. I like to save money. And when it comes to a project, my thought is, well, can I get away with printing that on a piece of paper and maybe just using some embroidery perfection tape and cutting out the design and putting, because a piece of printer paper is definitely cost less than Template Tearaway. Take it from me, for this project, invest in Template Tearaway. You're creating something that is going to be around for a long time. So just take the time to use the Dreamweave on the back of your fabric and to print your designs on the Template Tearaway. You're going to get a much better result on your project. So I've got those laid out. And the nice thing about the Template Tearaway is that it has an adhesive surface to it. So once you lay out your designs onto your fabric, when you go through the process of stitching out the design, and if you can figure out a way to stitch out all of these designs in one hooping, more power to you. I stitched out every one of these designs individually. And while this is a very easy project, one of the things I found was it did take some time to put the project together because, as I said, every one of these little designs had to be stitched out individually. So I started stitching out my designs, and I don't remember what order. And if you look at the picture, you'll notice it doesn't match the final one, because when I was laying them out, this was before I decided, oh, I'm going to put the largest design at the top and the smallest design at the bottom so that my monsters grow. Because Mr. Potato Head went to the top of the list. So I've got those on there. I just left the template tearaway with the designs on there, and I start stitching it out. Now, how am I going to stitch this out? The template tearaway allows for precision placement. So this is just a close-up. And what you can do with those crosshairs in there is that when you get your fabric over to the machine, you can move the design. You just move the whole machine and you line up the needle. And so I'd move the design and I'd use my hand wheel to drop the needle until I got the needle to almost the exact center in there. And actually, when I was looking at it with my eyes, it was on center. But now that I look at it in the photograph, it's not on center. But it's pretty darn close. Before I stitch this out, add a floater layer of stabilizer. This is your Floriani Tearaway Medium Stabilizer. Definitely do that. You just cut a piece that's a little bit larger than the design. You're going to drop that underneath the hoop of your machine. In your hoop, the stabilizer that I use is Floriani Perfect Stick. After the fact, I mentioned this, I think Wet and Stick would be a wonderful candidate for this project too, and I actually wish I had used the Wet and Stick. So if you haven't made yours yet, use your Wet and Stick. Be sure to use a basting stitch. If you incorporate the basting stitch into your design, you don't have to worry about it. It's going to automatically be the first thing to stitch out when you start stitching your design. And for my topping, I use heat and gone topping. Heat and gone topping with these designs works beautifully because heat and gone topping actually adds an additional stabilizer to your design. And they will look beautiful on whatever fabric that you stitch them out. But that heat and gone topping works beautifully on this project. Okay. So putting it all together, I've got my tape measure. Now, you're probably going to have to shorten your tape measure. And what I did is I just took a small flathead screwdriver, and then I inserted the screwdriver underneath the tip of the metal that's on the tape measure and lifted that off very carefully. I cut my tape measure, and then I inserted it back onto the tape measure. So because a 60-inch, that just made my project too big, I thought. And by the time my kids were 60 inches tall, I wasn't measuring their height anymore. To adhere my tape measure to my project, I'm going to use Stitch Perfection Tape, 1/2 inch. So Stitch Perfection Tape is one of our newer products. It's a double-sided tape. It's wonderful for this particular project because this tape measure is made out of vinyl. Normally I would use Applique Wonder to adhere items down to stitch them out, but the problem is that this is a vinyl tape measure, and if I use Applique Wonder, I need heat to adhere that Applique Wonder, and I'd melt my tape measure. So Stitch Perfection Tape in this scenario works perfectly. So I've got my Stitch Perfection Tape on there, and that's going to hold that tape measure in place for me to stitch it down. So let's move over to my machine and look at some of the different techniques for finishing the project. So for stitching the various items down, I used clear thread. And I went ahead and put in here Jenny Haskins. Floriani doesn't make a clear thread, but Jenny Haskins does. And Jenny Haskins is actually an RNK product, so you can order this thread through your Floriani dealer. But it's a fantastic thread. It's called Jenny Haskins Invisisheer thread. And I have that in the machine here, and you cannot even see it going through the needle. I use an open toe foot on my machine. The purpose of the open toe foot in there is that if you see, it helps to hold the items in place. So this is actually a close-up of me putting the chalkboard fabric onto there, but I did the same thing with the tape measure. So with my open toe foot, I can line up that item right here on the inside of the foot, and then I use my needle left or my needle right to move my needle all the way over and then stitch in the ditch right along the side there. So the feet that you get for your machine is an investment, but they're worth it because they really do help to elevate your sewing. So that's just a strategy. I even sewed the buttons on with the Invisys sheer thread. I sewed everything onto my project. As far as finishing goes, this is a close-up of Clarissa's, and I wanted to illustrate this because she chose a totally different method of finishing her project. If you look at hers up close, you'll see that she's used a rotary blade with the wave cutting on it or pinking shears. And the nice thing about that is that when you use pinking shears or when you do this kind of a cut right there, it's going to keep the edges from fraying because it puts it on the bias. So that's one option for finishing your project. And then she went through and she enhanced and embellished her chart, her thread chart, just with some of the decorative stitches on her machine. When you look at this right here, and I know you can't see it very well in the picture, but I just kind of wanted to show what she did. It almost looks like this is a separate piece of fabric, but it's not. So she stitched out the Look at Me Grow onto her fabric, and then this is a decorative stitch on her machine, and then this is decorative tape. So just stitching that over the top, and that makes it look like a frame. I chose to grab my serger and just do a rolled hem on the edge of my row chart to finish off the edge. So it's very, very quick and easy for finishing it. So those are nice, fast options for finishing that project. This was sent to us. These come from Brenda Pritchard in Oklahoma City. And Brenda, I did not ask your permission, so if you're watching, I apologize, but you should be flattered because I thought this was so exciting. You can see that she's already put her little, and look how big these are. So this is a growth chart. These are just some other projects, and it was kind of interesting. I saw this picture, and this is something that we're going to do next month is we're going to create some freestanding baskets. But this is just some inspiration. I hope that you are inspired by these designs, and I hope that as you go through and you create your various projects that you'll share them with us. Remember that you can share them on our Floriani Facebook page, but I will also, and this is just a looking ahead, but I'm going to send you my email. So this is our project for next month. So going to the previous slide right here, you'll see how she did those baskets. I thought, oh my gosh, she must have been reading my mind. So next month, we're going to be looking and we're going to be working on baskets. And so I wanted to get these together to do Easter baskets, so I made this for my husband. And you can't see the bottom. It says fishing cheaper than therapy. So this is for my husband, Mark, and he's so excited about an Easter basket. He made me put a handle on it. And then this was the basket I made for me. I am queen for a day, and I'm grandma because I tell my grandson I'm grand. Those are our projects for next month. As you go through this, if you have any questions about the project, I want to put out there my email. So it's Kathy F, Kathy with a Y, Kathy F at rnkdistributing.com. I'd also like to encourage you to send me pictures of your project. I would love to see what you're doing with this. I just love to see it. Okay, so I'm going to finish it there. DJ, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Excuse me. I do want to show a couple things really quick before we close up. And just give me 1 second here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
And you see the Floriani Club site?
Yes.
Okay. So I know that there's been a lot of questions that have come up during the webinar asking about how to get the project. So wanted to just quickly show where that is again. If you log into the club page, you using your username and password. When you click on the monthly designs and project tab, it does take you to where you can download the current designs. And you'll notice that the project is showing up here as well. So when you download the current month and you install it, it's going to automatically install the project as well. But we did give a different, provide a different folder for it. So it's not in just the designs folder. It's actually, it's right next to it, but I wanted to show that really quick. So if you go into your C drive and you go to Floriani and designs, just like you would for your free monthly designs, there is one called Free FTC-U Project, as you can see right here. When you double click on it, you're going to see that you have March 2016, and you'll find that the PDF file with all the instructions are located right there. So every month it's going to automatically install into the free FTC-U projects folder inside of the designs tab. So if you're already familiar with getting the free designs, it's just right before it on the list, and that's where you can access it. And we're very excited, and thank you, Kathy, because you did a wonderful job today presenting this, and we're very excited to bring you the next one next month that you showed. And thank you very much, and thank you everyone for attending, and we hope that you enjoyed the first FTC-U project webinar, and we will see you next time. Any last words, Kathy?
No, thank you very much. I forgot you had told me to share that. So I only want to emphasize, make the projects, everybody, and send us pictures, because we're going to get something going and have a little friendly competition later on.
Yes, and just make sure you post pictures to our Floriani Embroidery Facebook page, and that's where you'll see a lot of projects done in like My Decorative Quilter and things like that. So anyways, thank you guys very much for attending, and we will see you next time.
Bye.